But let's get started. We should be here, law of cosines. These are more formulas that you guys are given. You guys for sure did this in geometry. If you were in honors, you probably weren't tested on it, but in regular, I think you were. This is the law of cosines. You use this when you don't have any matching pairs. So when you don't have the same side as you do the angle. Or you use it when you have all three sides. If you are given all three sides, you're going to find whatever angle is biggest. If you're given a side, an angle, and a side, you can just pick any of them. But again, these are more formulas that you don't have to memorize. You can just copy paste them as we go through examples. There's only 3 examples in this lesson, so should be fairly quick. All right, so let's look at this first example. We want to solve the triangle. Once again, for the 3rd day in a row, solving the triangle means find every side, find every angle. All right, what are we given here? What pieces of information? We're given, okay, how many sides? 3 of them, right? So let's draw a triangle. All right, let me draw something out. Let's just say that is a triangle, sure. So we have a triangle. It's a made-up triangle. Label it however you want, but I'm just going to say that this is A equals 8 feet. I'm going to say that this is B equals 19 feet. And then this is C equals 14 feet. You're going to want to find the biggest angle first, right? So we have all 3 sides. The only thing that we need are angles. You want to find the biggest one first, just because if you don't, like let's say you pick the smallest one, there's like sometimes there's a strange case that'll happen. Sometimes you get 2 different triangles or you get an angle measurement that is, I don't know, that doesn't really make sense with what the image is, but that's why we picked the largest one first, right? We're not going to go through the various cases. Do we know which angle, even though we don't know the exact measurement, do we know which angle, A, B, or C, is going to be the biggest one? B, right? Why is it B? Because that's the biggest side, right? So if it's the biggest side, it is also going to be the biggest angle. All right? So which one's going to be the smallest angle in that case? A, right? Because that's the smallest side, right? If it's the smallest side, it's going to be the smallest angle. So check back at your formulas. Is there any formula that relates A, B, and C to where we can find angle B? All right, so if you look above, right, you're checking on one side of your equation, right? What do we see? There should be one that says cosine of B. All right, cosine of B equals what? Good. A squared plus, nice, plus C squared minus B squared divided by, you said 2AC? Nice. All right, so all we're going to do is we're going to plug this in here. Okay, so let's plug everything in. We should have cosine of B equals A, we know is 8. So this is going to be equal to 8 squared. C squared is 14 squared minus B squared, which is 19 squared. Over 2AC, so it's going to be 2 times 8 times 14. All right. This is where a lot of you make mistakes. All right, so what I would suggest to you guys, put in your calculator just the top and then put in your calculator just the bottom. All right, so type the top part in your calculator. 8 squared plus 14 squared minus 19 squared. What does that get you? Okay, so negative 101. Over, what does the bottom get you? 2 times 8 times 14. Good, 224. Good, so we have cosine of B equals negative 101 over 224. This gives us cosine of B. This doesn't get us our angle B, so what should we do to find just the angle B? Hopefully we know this by now. Good, right? Cosine inverse. We're going to do cosine with the negative 1 on both sides. All right, these are going to cancel out. And then b is whatever you get when you type in this in your calculator. So you're going to do cos inverse. Again, keep in mind it's seconds cosine. All right, so I'm going to do seconds cosine, and then you're going to type it in exactly as you see it, negative 101 over 224. All right, what do we get? What does it say to the nearest hundredth, right? So 2 decimal places. Nice. 116.80 degrees, or 0.8. So if there's a 0, it doesn't really matter. All right, so that's what we get as one of our angles. All right, are you okay with that one? Good, right? So in any given problem, you only have to use law of cosines once, just because once you have one of your angles, right? So let's fill this in. I know that this is b, and this is going to be 116.8. All right, what do we have now? All right, do we see that there's a matching pair? I have b and b. All right, so I have b and b. So that means we can use now what instead? Law of sines, right? Now that you have a matching pair, let's use law of sines. And we can find, let's just find angle A. Doesn't really matter which one. If you don't remember, go back to yesterday's notes and copy paste it. I think it's what, is it A over sine A? Equals B over sine B. Equals C over sine C. If I'm just trying to find angle A, let's just look at this part of it. Let's not worry about C. All right, so let's plug in the information that we have. So I know that it's going to be 8 over sine of A. We don't know what A is. Equals B over sine of B. It's going to equal 19 over sine of 116.80. All right. How did we do something like this yesterday? Cross multiply, right? If whatever you're looking for is on the bottom, then you can cross multiply. All right, so then what does that leave us with? It leaves us with 19 times sine of A equals 8 times sine of 116.80. And then to get sine of A by itself, let's divide both sides by 19. And then we get sine of A is 8 sine of 116.80 divided by 19. And then just like before, we can do sine inverse on both sides to get the A by itself, right? So let's do sine inverse. Sine inverse. These cancel out, and then A is going to be whatever you get when you plug this whole thing in your calculator. So again, just make sure you're super careful with how you're plugging it in. You don't want to make little mistakes in your calculator and then get a completely wrong answer, right? So we're going to do sine inverse, right? So do second sine, and then do 8 sine of 116.8, and then close the parentheses, divide it by 19. All right. We should get the same thing. I got 22.08 degrees. All right, so what I just did, law of sines, we did that yesterday. The new thing that we did was the law of cosines. All right, the first part of it, finding angle B. All right, what's the only thing missing now? Angle C, right? So to find angle C, yeah, nice guys, right? So subtract everything from 180. So to find the measure of angle C, we're going to do 180 minus the two angles that we have. So minus 116.8 minus 22.08. And then so I get the measure of angle C is, let me see what this is. 8 should get you 41.12 degrees. All right, and now we found all of our missing information. I found A, B, and C. So again, just like the last 2 days, these aren't short problems, but it's also, you need to do each part separately. It's not like all of it is one part. Okay, so let's try the same thing here. What information are we given? Okay, so we're given an angle and 2 sides, right? So let's draw it out. If you can do these without drawing it, that's perfectly fine. I like to draw it. I'm very visual. So I know that A is 25 degrees. I know that, let's just say that this is B and this is C, right? That means side B would have to be right here. This is 9 meters. And then side C would be right here. This is 12 meters. All right. We cannot use law of sines here just because we don't have any matching pairs, right? We don't have the same side as we do the angle for any of them, right? So that means we have to use law of cosines. All right, so yeah, go ahead. Check back at your formulas. Is there anything that relates an angle A, a side B, and a side C? Do you see it? What does it start with? We see, it should say C, or sorry, not C squared. A squared, right? It starts with A squared equals. Nice. Minus 2bc times cosine of A. Right, so it's a big formula, but you don't have to memorize it. You just need to be able to locate it and plug your information in. So all you're going to do is just plug everything in. Again, I would be careful in the calculator. Make sure to do everything one at a time. So I know A squared is equal to 9 squared plus 12 squared minus 2 times 9 times 12 times cosine of 25. This one you can probably do in one go, girls. All right, so let's plug this in. I do believe we get this number, 29.2375, all that. That's not our final answer. That gets us A squared. So what do we have to do to both sides? Girls, focus. Square root both sides. So take your answer, square root it. And then to the nearest hundredth is 2 decimal places. This is going to be 5.41 meters. All right, so now we have all 3 of our sides. All right, we're missing 2 angles now. All right, and now that we have side A, what does it look like we can use? Law of sines, right? Because we do have a matching pair, right? We do have this matches with this. All right, these match. So let's use law of sines. It doesn't matter which one you find, B or C, right? Let's try B. Doesn't really matter. Again, your law of sines is A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. Again, if you're just looking for B, bless you, you don't have to include the C part of it, right? Let's just do this one. Plug in all the information that you have, right? This is going to be 5.41 over sine of 25 equals, Ava, wait for her to come back. B over Well, we know b, right? This is 9 over sine of b. All right, and then just like before, we can cross multiply. So let's do that, see what we get. Let's do 5.41 times sine of b equals 9 times sine of 25. And then once again, to get the sine of b isolated, let's divide both sides by 5.41. So again, a long process, but this is just one part of it. After this, it's super easy. We get sine of b is 9 times sine of 25 divided by 5.41. All right, and then just like always, to get the b by itself, let's do sine inverse on both sides. So I know that b is whatever we get when we do sine inverse. Let me actually erase that. Let me just plug it in the calculator, right? We're going to do whatever we get when we plug that in the calculator. So take a second, plug it in. You can type it in exactly as you see it. Again, be careful with your parentheses. But we should get this number for angle B, capital B. All right, and now we have two angles, right? So now we can very easily find the third, right? To find the third angle, let's just subtract from 180, right? We're missing angle C. So I know that the measure of angle C has to be 180 minus whatever we're given, 25 minus our other angle. And then plug that in your calculator. And then we should get 110.33 degrees. And now this triangle is solved, right? So this is another scenario where you can use law of cosines, right? So this is the original one. I think the previous one was the alternate form, but they're the same formula. Okay, last little bit of the lesson is another easy one. You just have to know this formula. We do give you this formula. We don't give you this bit down here. So this one you do need to memorize this. It's not hard, right? It's just a plus b plus c divided by 2. That s actually stands for semi-perimeter. So if you take the perimeter, if you guys remember, a perimeter is just all the sides added up, and you cut it in half. That is your semi-perimeter. All right, but all you have to do, if you're given all three sides of a triangle, you can find the area of this triangle. This is called Heron's formula. You have a, b, and c, you find s, you just plug everything in. All right, so let's try this one. All right, so to find the area of this triangle, keep in mind you are given all three sides. The only thing that you need here is s, right? We don't know what s is, so let's find it. Keep in mind s is a plus b plus c divided by 2. So let's plug this into our calculator. We should get 43 plus 53 plus 72, and then divided by 2. And then when you plug that in your calculator, you should get 84. All right, so your semi-perimeter is 84, and then when you plug this into your formula, keep in mind the formula that we're using is s times s minus a, s minus b, s minus c, and then you can take a square root. All right, plug these numbers in, and you should get 84 times 84 minus 43 times 84 minus 53 and then times 84 minus 72, all under a square root. Again, that's a lot of stuff to put in your calculator. If you want to do it one at a time, you can, right? So if you want to find whatever that number is, whatever that number is, and then whatever that number is, that might be a little bit better than just plugging the whole thing in your calculator. But if you can see every number, if you know that whatever you're plugging in is correct, that's perfectly fine. Just, again, be careful with your parentheses. All right, so I'll try this, and I will let you know that I got the area is equal to 1,131.89 square meters. So again, a lot to plug in, but again, I do give you the formula. The only thing that I don't give you is the semi-perimeter. But again, the area ones should be fairly quick. We did area ones yesterday as well that also were fairly quick. There's really no other scenarios that you're going to have to find the area. I know you guys know 1/2 base times height probably, but we don't really use that here. But that's it for this lesson. I think you guys have a homework. You guys can get started.